The Catholic Church is presently occupied by an extraneous body that superimposes itself on her and obscures her, similar to an eclipse. Okay, just imagine hearing those words, not from some outside critic, but from a former top-level diplomat from right inside the Vatican itself. It's an absolutely explosive claim, literally declaring that the modern Catholic Church has been hijacked by a counterfeit entity. Welcome to today's Explainer. We are stepping right into the absolute center of a super intense religious and political schism. Today we're going to impartially and strictly examine the writings and the really bold claims of Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano. Now, whether you're a Vatican politics junkie or completely new to this whole conflict, our goal today is to give you a really clear, direct understanding of the arguments fueling this traditionalist rebellion. We're not taking sides here, we are simply looking at the source material to understand exactly what the man is arguing.
So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. Excommunication and a usurped papacy. 2. Allegations of Vatican corruption. 3. Rejecting Vatican II and Bergoglio. 4. The anti-globalist political stance. And finally, 5. A call for traditional resistance.
Now take a look at this official coat of arms. We really need to establish his historical standing right out of the gate. Archbishop Vigano wasn't just some fringe outsider. No, he was a highly placed Vatican insider. He served as the Apostolic Nuncio, which is essentially the Pope's ambassador to the United States. So he was part of the central nervous system of the Catholic Church's entire diplomatic corps. Let's trace how we actually got here. From 2009 to 2011, Vigano was the Secretary General of the Vatican Governorate. This is where he claims he actually discovered and tried to clean up this vast network of financial corruption. Then, from 2011 to 2016, he served as the nuncio to the U.S. But the real earthquake, that happened in 2018. That's when he published what we now call the McCarrick Memo. It was an explosive whistleblower document alleging a massive cover-up of abuse at the absolute highest levels. This escalating conflict ultimately boiled over in July 2024 when the Vatican officially excommunicated him for schism.
All right, let's dive into our first topic: excommunication and a usurped papacy.
At the very core of his defiance, Vigano views his July 2024 excommunication as totally null and void. Now you might be wondering, how does he justify that? Well, because he considers Pope Francis, who he pointedly calls by his birth name, Bergoglio, to be a counter-pope and a usurper. Vigano argues that you literally cannot be in schism from the Catholic Church if the guy leading it has, in Vigano's view, broken the supernatural bond with Christ. He claims the current pope lacks any legitimate divine authority because he's leading what Vigano basically calls a counterfeit synodal church.
Moving right along to Section 2, Allegations of Vatican corruption.
Vigano points to some very specific cases as his proof of institutional decay. First up, financial mismanagement at the IOR, which is the Vatican Bank. He accuses high-ranking officials like Cardinal Bertone of making speculative investments and manipulating illicit contracts. Second, the McCarrick abuse cover-up. Vigano is claiming the crimes of former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick were just completely ignored for decades by Vatican superiors, all in favor of secretive political deal-making. And finally, he points to recent stuff, like the Rugolo case in Italy, alleging that abuse of minors was covered up using financial payoffs and strategic transfers, while the guys involved got protection from Rome. For Vigano, these aren't just isolated bad apples, they are symptoms of a systemic occupation.
Next up, Section 3, Rejecting Vatican II and Bergoglio.
To really grasp the root of this schism, we have to talk about the Second Vatican Council, or Vatican II. This was a massive gathering in the 1960s meant to modernize the Church's relationship with the world. It changed the liturgy, relationships with other religions, the whole shebang. Now, the modern institution celebrates this, right? But Vigano? He goes as far as to describe Vatican II as the masterstroke of Satan. He argues it was literally a Trojan horse designed to Protestantize and secularize the Church from the inside out.
So he draws this incredibly hard line between two totally distinct concepts. On one side, you have his vision of the true church. That's rooted in the unchanging magisterium, it celebrates the ancient apostolic mass, and it is entirely focused on eternal salvation. He contrasts that sharply with the modern synodal church, which he views as a Protestantized counterfeit. He argues this new version just focuses on human brotherhood, environmentalism, and worldly compliance. In his mind, these two absolutely cannot coexist.
Which brings us to Section 4, the anti-globalist political stance.
This is where his message goes way beyond traditional Catholics. Vigano draws a direct, explicit parallel between what he calls a deep church and a secular deep state. He writes extensively against Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset. He directly calls out the World Economic Forum. He claims current migration crises are engineered for ethnic replacement. He condemns woke ideology, LGBTQ+ agendas, and what he calls climate alarmism and psychopandemic mandates. His religious resistance directly intersects with these modern, secular political controversies. It's how he appeals to a really broad audience fighting what he calls a globalist coup.
And he ties this entire secular coup directly back to the Pope. He writes, Bergoglio's role in the implementation of the globalist hell was decisive, an emissary of the World Economic Forum. He genuinely believes the current Vatican leadership isn't just misguided. He thinks they are actively serving a Masonic, anti-Christian secular agenda that's trying to destroy the Christian West.
Finally, Section 5, a call for traditional resistance.
So what is his actual game plan? Well, at the absolute center of it all is the traditional Latin Mass, or the Tridentine Mass. This is the historic pre-Vatican II liturgy. For Vigano, this isn't just, preferring older music or liking the sound of Latin. He champions this Mass as the very beating heart of the Catholic religion. He argues that this traditional rite is a spiritual fortress against the modernist infiltration he's fighting so fiercely.
And here is the practical, step-by-step playbook he is giving the laity. Step 1 is an intellectual one. Entirely reject the Concilio Revolution and this globalist deception. Step 2 gets super practical. Because the Vatican is restricting the Latin Mass, he's urging followers to establish home chapels or literally buy independent churches just to ensure it survives. Step 3, materially and financially support faithful priests who resist the modern Mass and who are facing punishment from Rome. He is basically calling for a totally decentralized, independent network of traditional believers.
So, what does this all mean for the future? Will Vigano's traditionalist resistance, with its explosive allegations and this highly organized call to action, genuinely reshape the future of the Catholic Church? Or is it just going to remain a fractured rebellion, totally isolated from the billion-member institution it's trying to reclaim? Whatever happens, this historic clash really does reveal a battle over the very soul of one of the world's oldest institutions. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.